I always joked when I was young, I want like Nike to buy Hyperice someday because Nike's a performance brand. And like, that was sort of, but now like we want to be our own Nike of recovery.
Hi, I'm Ros Gold-Onwude, and this is Risk and Reward. In today's episode, we talk to Hyperice founder and president, Anthony Katz. Okay, Anthony, what is Hyperice and why did you start it?
Well, going back to 2010 when I actually founded the company, and I think people, they see it now and they see this whole suite of sort of like recovery and mobility products. And it really didn't start out that way. It really started out, I was really singularly focused on one idea. And so if you go back to 2010, there was no like recovery industry. There was no technology brands that were using technology to speak to athletes in the way we're doing now. I was looking at it from my own perspective. I just had crossed into the 30s and my body started to not respond the same way it does when you're in your 20s. So you start to get sore, you start to, your recovery time's a little bit slower. And so I was always just really curious about the body. And I was like, well, what do pro athletes do? And really the only thing at the time was, guys would do ice baths, if they had them at the facility, guys would get massages, and, guys would ice joints. And so of those three things, the one thing I thought, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could start icing my joints. But I started to say, well, look, maybe I could, it's all about breaking the inflammation cycle. And so I started to look and say, okay, like what, how, are athletes still doing it the same way I did it when I went to high school in the 90s, which was like a plastic bag and you just wrap something around it. And then it kind of like sparked this of like, well, what if we had something that was like, that actually like looked cool. It wasn't something that you looked wounded or looked like you were hurt. And so right around that time, it was about a year after Beats by Dre launched. And I kind of noticed how athletes like were wearing the headphones, and it was like because they were wearing it had this like trickle down effect in the culture. And I'm like, well, look, athletes ice all the time. What if I can get them to wear like ice, turning into like a wearable? Younger athletes would see it and be like, oh, I want to like take care of my body the way the pro athletes are doing. So that was sort of like the central idea.
When you look at the backstory of many disruptive business people, you often see early signs of entrepreneurial talent even in their childhood. But Anthony Katz did not have a business background. In many ways, he's kind of like an accidental entrepreneur. He's a former high school teacher with a passion for hoops who, in his 30s, started to find himself feeling sore after playing basketball games. But then, he noticed the glaring market need, and he decided to start from scratch to fill it.
I was a high school teacher and a basketball coach. I had never started a business. I had no business experience. I really had no desire to go into business, to be honest. But I just became singular focused on like this idea of like, could I create like a really cool product? I went to a wetsuit factory and was getting scrap pieces of neoprene and cutting different patterns to see how they like fit around the knee. And then I was using kind of like just off the shelf medical ice bags. And so around this time, my friend had been working out with Kobe Bryant because Kobe lived in Newport Coast and he worked out at UCI. My friend was the assistant coach at UCI. And so I was bringing these to my friend at UCI, like kind of showing him what I was doing. And he's like, hey, I'm going to tell Kobe ice is like every single day what you're doing. And so a couple of weeks later, like he's like, hey, Kobe wants to see your thing. And so I remember the first day I showed him, he goes, hey, I'll try it out and I'll give you some feedback. And, a couple of weeks later, he came back. And he said, okay, look, he's like, you got it really tight. He's like, I like the wrap, but it squeezes all the air to the top and it blocks the compression. And so we were kind of like talking to some stuff. And then I came up with the idea for having a button that releases all the air so it fit tighter. And I remember the last thing he said was, he's like, hey, he goes, I like your idea. It just has a way to go. But if you ever make something that's good enough that works better than what I do now, which is an ice bag and ace bandage, I'll wear it on the bench. And so that was sort of like the challenge of like, okay, now I got to go figure out a way to do that. And then, was able to, about a year and a half later, get it out into, not even before it was in the market, it was just sort of an NBA insider product. I remember the last time I saw him was in August of 2019. And, we were about to launch the Hypervolt Plus, which is like the second version of our Hypervolt product. And I saw him a lot more when he played. Because I'd be at the Laker facility and we'd run into each other. And then I saw him less and less frequently. But in 2019, I went to his office and we'd made these like special edition boxes for the first 100 Hyperbole Pluses, and he opened it, and he looked at it, and he's like, hey, my daughter's going to be excited because she uses this product more than I do. And then he was asking me about the business, and he said, and I remember him saying, I can't believe you made it this far with that stupid name, and meaning the Hyperice, because he always hated the name. And I reminded him, I go, well, remember why I named it Hyperice? Because at the time, or a year or two earlier, you had popularized the Hyperdunk. Like that was the Nike Hyperdunk that came out during the Olympics in 08. And that was like my favorite basketball shoe ever. And my thinking was that, there's the Hyper Dunk, which is a Nike Dunk's an old shoe, and it was a new way of doing it, right? It was a new, better, better way of technology into the shoe. And so I'm like, okay, well, you wear Hyper Dunk, and then you wear Hyper Ice, and that's kind of where the name kind of came from. And then in 2020, we became the official partner. The NBA invested in Hyper Ice, and we became the official recovery partner of the NBA. The first ever official recovery partner of any league in the world was us when we did the deal with the NBA. And so I remember seeing the press release, and this is after he passed, and I was like, wow, like we have one of our products that was 4 or 5 products down the line from the original one, but it's now like mandated on the bench. And that's kind of where it felt like it kind of came full circle. Like I was just trying to get one guy to wear one time, one product, and now it's become like part of the NBA culture. So I remember when we announced the NBA partnership that like everyone was really happy in our company, and like it was a little bit like sad for me, because I was like, I just like wish he was there just to see it, because it was like, wow, like a meeting that I had with him at the UCI training room in 2009, and this is like where it ended up.
What do you think is the biggest risk you had to take to help get this company off the ground?
Well, I mean, I think it was risky me having the audacity to even take investment. I mean, it was like, here I am, like really no track record, no, it was just me. I was taking investment from people that that were believing in me with really nothing to go off of. I joked that I had like some friends and family invest, and I was like, if this thing fails, I got nowhere to go on Thanksgiving. It was like I had, and taking money from athletes too. And I really just wasn't like, failure was not an option. I had proven that I had made a product that the athletes really liked, but I had not proven that there was a business around it.
Listening to you talk about the importance also of building your team. I know that you're a private wealth client of Goldman Sachs. They're part of your team. How have they helped you as an entrepreneur and in building your business?
My wealth manager will ask questions about like my family and my future and where I wanted to go.
Professionally, you got it all. How do you identify trends that are happening in the industry? I mean, you were on it. Like how did you recognize that there was a lot of potential for a market for recovery and performance and warm up?
Yep. I knew athletes were like icing every day. Basketball players do ice their knees every day. So I understood that. So I'm like, if I could just find a better, cleaner way to do it that like looks better, performs better, the athletes will wear it. So it's like, if you build it, they will come kind of mentality. When I did that, and then the athletes were like, hey, I want you to come see my trainer. And like, I would fly out to an NBA training room just for like the network, right? And so when I got there, I was in an NBA training room or an NFL training room or like meeting a sports scientist, and I would say, okay, well, I'm coming in a room that not a lot of people to get to go in, right? And so like, what are they doing in here? Because I wanted to see like what was next. And the one thing I would always focus on when I went in is I'd always ask the trainers, like, what do you think the next thing is? And I would see, and I'd be like, well, they're using these like $10,000 vibration platforms. They're using this like $3,000 really crude percussion device. They're using this laser. I was kind of like observing of like what was there. And what really struck me was like, wow, the people that are the companies that are making these products, they're not talking to athletes. I was able to build the relationships that I had the access in getting, so that I could, if I was going to develop a product, I could get direct input in product testing with the athlete. So for the second product, I was like, okay, I kept going into training rooms and I kept seeing that like, wow, everyone is talking about soft tissue. That was like the huge trend that was just beginning. So like recovery was what athletes are always looking for an advantage, right? They're competitive. They're always looking like, how could I bounce back a little faster? Kobe notoriously like took an ice bucket everywhere it went. Everyone had their own like kind of, LeBron would have his masseuse come everywhere with him. There was sort of this like, okay, 82 games, we got to bounce back faster. If you could be this much more ready for the next game, you're at an advantage. So what I saw was like, okay, it seems like that this vibration and percussion technology is like, no one knows it on the outside world, but if you come in the training room, the guys are doing it a lot. And so I'm like, I wanted a product that had a wider use case, because ice was like just after or when you're hurt. So what if I could take the technology that's in that vibration platform that's $10,000 and put that power into like a product that's this size? And so that's why I had the idea for the vibration foam roller and the vibration ball. This boutique German foam roller company made this material that was perfect. And I said, that's what I need. And I brought it back to the States, shrunk everything down, squeezed a PVC pipe with all the vibration motor and everything into it, and realized it worked. And there was like sort of a breakthrough that I was like, okay, well, now I can prove this out. And so then I saw the players, when I came up with the prototypes for the Viper, they were like very responsive. They're like, oh wait, you can put my vibration work into a foam roller. Like that was like that idea really connected really well. And I remember that being adopted so fast. So like we went from we were a company doing like $1 million in sales to 5 million in sales in 12 months, because the Viper was really adopted quickly by the professional athlete community.
My main question is, how do you get there then? Because we started out, you were in your garage, you literally had some neoprene and ice bags.
Yeah.
Like, what does it take actually to manufacture an actual product with aesthetics and that can be reproduced over and over again beyond your beta prototype? How did you do that?
When Kobe kind of challenged me, I realized like, okay, this can't just be an art project. I have to like bring in people that really know like engineering and manufacturing. So I got connected to a local aerospace manufacturer. And there's nothing more like long shot than say, I'm going to go into an aerospace manufacturer that's making precision parts for all different industries. And I was like, I'm going to tell them that I want to make an ice bag with the air release valve on it. And they're just going to laugh. And I remember just like feeling like there's a 0% chance they're going to go for this. Right. So and then I went in, and there was I got to meet with one of their engineers. I'm like, hey, I've been talking, and I've been showing Kobe Bryant, and he will wear this if we make it. And I think honestly, the Kobe factor, like if it wasn't for that, they probably would have just like said, we're not interested. We don't do this type of work. They just took a flyer. Right. And actually they said no first. And then I kind of like they just realized I wasn't going to go away until they said yes. So I am, while I'm leading the development, it's like, you're quarterbacking an entire team of engineers, industrial designers, your regulatory, your manufacturing partners, and then like your logistics. So it's a huge team effort. Product development, one guy's name gets the credit for it, but it's the work of so many people.
I mean, you've got a bunch of products, but it's more than a product. You said it's now a brand. How does Hyperice live in the lives of everyday people as well as pro athletes?
We use the pro athletes to authenticate and legitimize like some of the modalities, right? Like using a percussion device every day or getting an Normatec every day. And like obviously those have applications if you're a professional athlete.
Hyperice has investments and endorsements from some of the biggest athletes, teams, and leagues in the world. But Anthony Katz has even bigger ambitions. He wants his products to be part of the mass consumer's daily health routine, no different than your toothbrush.
What I'm trying to kind of convince like just people that I know in my everyday life is like, hey, just because these are athletes, you see athletes using the product, these are for everyone. It's basically like, I look at some of our products no different than I look at any other routine you have in your life. So like the way I kind of look at like a product like the Hypervolt is picture it like it's like your Sonicare toothbrush for your body. But that's really kind of sort of where I see the future of health, is that just as we have an oral hygiene routine, we have a soft tissue and fluid routine, and we're trying to make the technology that like is the most easy to use, scalable, and intuitive product line for building what we call like body care or soft tissue hygiene.
I absolutely respect the vision, and I guess we finished coming full circle. I mean, remember this all started after being in pain after pickup games? Now you've got the Normatec, Hypervolt, Venom, the Viper, the list goes on. What is the ultimate reward of seeing this company grow to what it is and can be?
I was a history teacher before, and I'm a student of history, and I always think in terms of make an impact on the culture. The idea that we can improve the way the body moves through technology, like that idea, putting that into the culture, introduce the world to better things. So the ultimate reward is having an impact on the culture, whether it's the culture of sport or fitness or health, but ultimately like the broader culture. And that, like I go back to like we just want people to look at their health in a way where like you can use technology to interface with your body and improve the quality of life. And so whether it's an athlete or an everyday person, that's sort of like the bigger picture vision.
Anthony, this has been fascinating to hear the journey from pickup basketball to, I mean, truly shifting the culture around recovery and the way we think about how we take care of our bodies. I'm super excited for now and the future of Hyperice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.